I'm the last kid of seven. I have four brothers and two sisters, and my brother that's above me, Norman and Jerry. Those are the main wrestlers of our family. Um, and having two older brothers like that, growing up, constantly uh, getting beat up by them, and being it first, and having to just be tested on the daily. I gotta say, I think really helped me shape my personality and I guess, my strive to succeed. Um, and so when wrestling came into our life, it was uh, it was pretty amazing, because we were coming from a single mother household. Didn't have much money, um, and wrestling was kind of our way of of I don't know. I get my older brother said expressing himself, and so I don't know. I
Impressive.
don't know if yeah. Uh, and it kind of showed in his style of wrestling. But um, so when wrestling came into our life, it was something that we could focus on, and really give us something to control, because life can get out of control sometimes. And wrestling was that for us, and we really used it to, I guess, improve our life. And uh, so Jerry was real successful, and he was 6 years older than me. And so as he was learning things, he was passing them down to me. And so as the years went by, I consistently got better. And it wasn't until I got to, I guess, high school where I realized that wrestling was can be important. It can get me a scholarship to college. It can give me a future. It can improve my life. And so I decided to stick with it. And I think my brother having my brother Jerry in my corner, he really had a different outlook on life in general. And then he applied it to wrestling, and really explained how um, wrestling can be real tough, and test you every day. I mean, when you're faced with an opponent in front of you who's trying to beat you down, it's a test mentally, physically. And it was something that he was able to explain to me in a way that I could understand it, and apply it on the daily. And so going to practice every day with the attitude of trying to get better, trying to improve myself. Um, um, this this is what helped me learn and grow on a fast level. So when I got to high school, I decided to take it pretty serious. And my freshman year in California, I placed fourth as a freshman in the state tournament. And in California, that's pretty tough. California is one of the best wrestling states in the country. And as a freshman, I placed fourth, which was pretty good. And so the next year, I remember leaving that day at the state tournament still, and my brother's telling me just try to do better next year. And so I just kind of was like, okay. And so continued wrestling in the summertime, and sophomore year came around, and I'm faced with an opponent. Moved up a weight class, and this opponent was ranked number one all year. And so I had to wrestle him four times that year. He had beaten me twice, and then I had beaten him twice. And the last match was for the state finals in sophomore year. And so I won my first state tournament as a sophomore. And junior year, I went undefeated. Senior year, I went undefeated. And I knew I probably could have gotten a scholarship anywhere in the country. I was one of the top ranked recruits out of that recruiting year. And I decided to go to Fresno State because my brother was there, and he's been my coach my whole life. So I decided I wanted to stay there in Fresno, and and keep my skills on the west side, on the west coast. My brother was real adamant about that because we've lost a few of our good guys to Oklahoma State or Penn State or Iowa or wherever they went. Our California guys have left, and I decided I wanted to try to keep that home, keep it on the west side, and so I went to Fresno State and had a great first year. Anytime you're making a big transition like that, I mean, you're leaving high school, you're going to college. I mean, you're faced with all kinds of new things going on. Um, you know, School, obviously, and relationships and sports and everything. A lot of things going on, and so that transition for me was a little bit easier because I had wrestling to focus on, and I really had a good attitude, I think, going in because I realized that it was a new level, and I realized that I was gonna take some bumps and some bruises and learn some things and experience some things, and so I I ended up my freshman year. I competed. I uh, I was 24 and 0 or 25 and 0 my freshman year in college. I won my first 25 matches. I beat some ranked guys in the very few weeks of the season, and I made a direct impact my freshman year. They saw that I was ready and able, and they've been kind of waiting for me because of Jerry. My older brother was a four-time All-American at Fresno State and a three-time national finalist. So he made a name for our family, and then here I come, his little brother, and I made an immediate impact. And my freshman year was invited to the All-Star match, which is reserved for the number one and number two ranked guys in the country. And as a freshman, I'm 18 and just excited to be competing on this level. And I got invited to this All-Star match and had to wrestle the number three ranked guy in the country. And he ended up beating me in overtime or something real close like that, 1 point match. And I took my first loss, ended up winning my next. Let me see, what was screw it. So I ended up winning my next 10 or 12 matches, and then made it to the NCAAs. And at the time, I was ranked number two. They bumped me up to number two. Going as a freshman in college, I was ranked number two, and that's pretty huge. It says a lot. And so I end up wrestling in the quarterfinals. I wrestled this kid from Iowa, and he ends up beating me, and he was ranked number six. So for me to take that loss in the quarterfinals to a guy that I'm supposed to beat, it was you can understand how it can be disturbing. It was disturbing. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. And so I remember sitting down and thinking, what am I going to do now? I mean, I was supposed to beat that guy. I have to get it together. I have to refocus and get back out there. And I ended up winning like the next 4 or 5 matches and making it into the match for third and fourth. And surprisingly, I have to wrestle him again for third and fourth. I have to wrestle the same guy from Iowa again. And the first time we wrestled, he tested me a few things. He did a few things to me that kind of tested me and messed with my mental. And I wasn't able to do the things that I wanted to do. The second match came around, and I was a little more understanding of those things. And he did a few of those things again, and it frustrated me so much to the point where I lost control. And I after him pushing me 5 times, I pushed him back, and they caught me pushing him back and gave him a point, which tied it up. And I lost the match in overtime. So my freshman year in college, I took 4th place. And again, I just thought back to my freshman year. It's my freshman year in high school. I took 4th place. All right, it means something. And so again, after that year, I really believed that I was on a different level. And I think that year I competed in the world trials for the first time. I went to the U.S. Open and the Olympic, the world trials that year.
Stephen, can you explain to the students just the difference, just the transition from NCA, the collegiate style, and the Olympic style, just to make sure they.
Okay, yes. So high school and college style considered folk style, and it's a basic point system. Takedowns are worth.
Sorry, can I interrupt you for 1 second? For those students, now we got 51 kids in here. Welcome, guys, to all of you guys. We have a nice treat. We have Stephen Abbas, a 3-time NCAA champion and Olympic silver medalist, Olympic silver medalist in wrestling. So thank you. Take it away.
Okay. So where was I? Oh yeah. So the difference between freestyle and folk style is just the point system. Freestyle is the competition that the world uses. And when original wrestling began in a certain style, and it spread throughout the world. And in the 40s, I want to say, or 50s, they decided they wanted to make the US decided to make a league of their own. And that's when folk style came in and decided that they're going to have some different rules and whatnot. And so folk style wrestling is what we wrestle in high school. When I was a kid, they didn't have folk style wrestling as a kid. Now folk style wrestling is everywhere. Kids wrestling it everywhere. So they even changed, I don't know, they changed the freestyle takedowns to 2. So I don't know. But they're always changing the freestyle rules. So from folk style to freestyle, I constantly changed from the school year to the summertime, constantly wrestling all year round, constantly learning, constantly having experiences, just subconsciously taking in these experiences and growing from them. And I think that's true about anything in life. When you do anything so much, you're gonna take some of it in. You're gonna grow from it. And so I'm constantly wrestling. And so I competed my first year on the open level against men in 97. And I was 18, 19 years old at the time. And it was exciting for me because I kind of felt like it's a transition. It's an upgrade. What's it called when you reach a certain age in a
mature.
Oh, plateau or mature.
Yeah, it's a passage that you go through, that you go through, and you reach that certain level. And so at the US Open, I was wrestling with the men and was doing pretty good. And it was a good learning experience for me. I took 6th, I think, that year at the US Open, which qualified me for the world trials. And my first match, I think I draw the 1996 Olympian for our team. He was the 1996 Olympian, Lou Roselli, and I drew him first round at the World Team Trials, and I ended up taking him down twice and taking him to overtime, and I ended up losing the match. But for me to do that well against him really made me understand how good I was. And I think I try to explain this to a lot of my students that you go through things and you may not succeed, but you're going to learn. You're going to fail. You may fail, but you're going to learn something from it. And for me to have such a close match with an Olympian, and I'm only 18, 19 years old, it was a real good experience for me. And so that year went by. I didn't make the team. My next year in college, as a sophomore, with a little more confidence, after competing on the open level with the men, really gave me a boost. So I went into that next year with that confidence, but with the desire to get better, and with the desire to challenge myself on the daily. And I would try things in practice, and then I would try things when I would compete, which is sometimes not appreciated because it can get risky. But I did it anyways because I felt that was the only true test. That is if I gave it my best and did something that tested me. And so I would do things when I would wrestle that would seem a little outlandish or unexpected, but I would do that for my test and for entertainment value as well. I think it brought a few eyes towards my mat when I would wrestle.
That's the style that Julieta calls funkiness.
Funky, yeah, funky. I wanted to ask you maybe some other time, but wanted to get your impression of the first time you saw me wrestle. But and so so I continued to wrestle, and then my sophomore year, I was winning. I won my first 10 matches, and then the kid from Oklahoma State that I had a real tough match with the previous year was supposed to come to a dual meet to Fresno. Their team from Oklahoma State was supposed to come to Fresno, and we were going to have a match. He was ranked number 1, and I was ranked number 2. And something happened where he got in trouble and decided he didn't come to the dual meet. And so instead of me wrestling their backup 125 pounder, I decided I wanted to go up a weight class and wrestle their 2-time national champion from San Jose. His name was Eric Guerrero, and he went to Independence High School, and he was wrestling at Oklahoma State at the time. And I decided I wanted to go up a weight class and wrestle him for a test, so I can see what could happen if I did this. Win or lose, it doesn't matter. The journey and the test was what was important. And so it was a fun match. I remember how exciting it was. At Fresno State, we didn't have a very big arena. We didn't wrestle in an arena. We wrestled in a little gym, and the gym would get packed with people at Fresno, especially for the big matches like Oklahoma State. And so I remember the gym being packed, and the crowd was just in a frenzy, and it was kind of like a surprise when I went out and wrestled, and it was pretty cool. It was an exciting time. And so from that point on, I won the rest of my matches. I made it to the NCAAs. I was ranked number 1 at the time because the kid from Oklahoma had lost twice, I think. He had lost twice, and I went undefeated. Made it to the NCAAs, ranked number 1. He's ranked number 4. He dropped all the way down to 4. And I wrestled him in the semifinals of the NCAAs. He's the returning NCAA champion. And for me to face him at that point in the tournament was exciting, and I had the closest match in my life. I think we went into double overtime, and I really had to dig down deep and finish the match strong. I mean, I guess there's at any point I could have had a little waver in my mind and doubted myself, or and at that moment, you can lose it all. So I just stayed positive and grinded it out, and I won the match. And so in the finals, I won in the finals and won my first NCAA title. And at that point, that was my biggest win of my career. To win at the highest level as a sophomore, it says a lot. It says that I have a future. And so
Tell them how many people are watching NCA. That is a big thing because they have them in a different arena just for the magnitude of the people who attend the whole NCA.
yes. So at the NCAA's, that's the biggest tournament that I ever really competed in. The Olympics obviously has the name, but at the NCAA's, the arena there, the energy there, the knowledge of wrestling there is just amazing, and you can feel it in the air. And anyone who goes, I think, can feel it, even if they don't understand most of what's going on. They feel that energy, and it's just an amazing thing. There's like 20,000 people or something, or sometimes more, depending on the arenas. But so many knowledgeable fans out there, and it's just been an amazing experience wrestling at the NCAA level. So and so as I won my sophomore year in NCAA's, and then continue to try to make the world team in the summertime. I competed when I left high school. I competed in Russia. I competed in Finland. I was wrestling on the junior world teams before I made the world and Olympic team. I was competing on the junior world team in high school, and I've been able to travel to Russia and Finland, and the traveling part of wrestling has always been my most appreciated part of the sport. Obviously, winning in a sport and competing and winning is nice, but being able to travel and see the world and have a different outlook on life from travel, and being in a different culture and atmosphere, and I think is one of the best knowledges that you can get. One of the best scholars you can get. But so as my year went on, my junior year, I went undefeated. I think I won 51 matches as a junior. Went undefeated, and I think as a junior was really my year. I think it was 2001, and was really the year where I felt that I was at the top of my game. Like I felt like everything was happening how it was supposed to. I was really setting my path as I was competing, and I would try things in wrestling matches to really test myself physically, test myself mentally, try to break as many records as I could. I really just tried to test myself as much as I could. I know that there's athletes out there sometimes that they get so good at something that they get comfortable about just doing that and winning. In wrestling, I have an example about people shooting a double leg, and they shoot their double leg, and it's so good they shoot their double leg all the time, and then all of a sudden that's all they have is a double leg, and eventually people are going to be able to figure out that double leg. So I've always had the mentality of trying to have a wide arsenal, being able to attack from all positions, just so my opponents never know where I'm coming from. They never know when I'm going to attack or where I'm going to come from. So that was just my mentality about, I guess, learning and growing, trying to have a wide array of attacks. And it really drove my learning curve because I was learning at a high level. I was competing at a high level. I was um, experimenting on a high level, and I was really just trying to test my limits, test my limits, and break through. And so my junior year, I made my first world team after I went undefeated and won the NCAA's again. 2001, I went to the world team trials and I made my first world team. And in 2001, we remember in New York they had the plane crashes, and so our world tournament was supposed to be in New York that year. And so because that tragedy, our tournament was moved to Bulgaria, and that was a pretty new experience. And that was, you were there, right?
My country, yeah, because I competed for Bulgaria too. So we were in the same arena
Right.
for the record.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that was a fun experience, but it was interesting too because we had a lot of security, and it was done in an ice rink, I think.
So they couldn't go, so we have to drive them. I
Yeah.
remember the heavyweight Americans like, we want to eat McDonald's. I say, all right, let's do it. It's my home country. I can do it.
Right.
Yes.
And it was the tournament was moved back a couple of months, and so we all had to adapt our training, and
The
my
diet.
what's that?
The diet. The diet.
Oh yes, the
Yeah,
diet.
wait,
Diet. Yep, cutting weight. Yep. I mean, we all had to adjust, and I think that's one of the biggest lessons that wrestling teaches us is that being able to adapt and to adjust to situations, because things can happen so fast, and we have to make that split decision to go in the right direction. Um, and so my first year on the world level in 2001, I made my first world tournament, and for me to make the team at, I think I was 20. No, how old was I? I was 21, 22 at the time, and I wrestled my first match. I wrestled a guy from Belarus, and never heard of him or anything. And um, he's beating me 2-0 or something. And I come back and I'm beating him by like 4 points. And I ended up doing something stupid and putting myself to my back. And um, he ended up winning. And because I lost my first match, that means I can't continue in the tournament. And I ended up watching him go all the way to the finals and win the tournament. And for me to know that I was beating him in the beginning, and I could have won the match if I was just a little bit more cautious or a little bit more reserved, then I could have, things could have been different. So I ended up watching him win. And so again, having that losing experience really helped me realize that I'm right there. Like, I'm so close. Like, I had that guy beat, and he won the world championships. He's the best guy in the world, and I almost had him beat. And it was a realization for me, and it really drove me again to try to improve and get better. And I would come across matches in college where I was way better than these guys. And it wasn't that I just go out there and prove that. I would go out there and try to learn something from it. I would go out there and try to do something that I never did before, or maybe, or try something else a different way. Um, and so it was a real test for me to try to uh, uh, improve then, and use those guys to improve with. And so uh, I really think I made a gap there because I really stepped away from a lot of my competition. There was a couple of guys that throughout the years, throughout, the next few years, 2002, 2003, 2004, when I made the Olympic team, there was a few guys that really stood out, that really gave me battles, and I really was, focused on those guys. But for the most part, I was dominant over most competitors, and I think, for one, obviously the confidence, I think, means everything. If you believe in yourself, it can really, really overcome a lot of adversity. Just your mentality alone. Um, Start adding in things like physical ability or work ethic, and you can really set a nice path for yourself. And and I think that's what I used throughout my career, and just having that mentality, competing, and
Well, you just not have the only the mentality, but you work hard. I love what you say, that you tried this, you tried that, you want to be different. So you are constantly changing, constantly learning, constantly, your opponents don't know how to attack you because you're changing and you're becoming, funky and unique. And so it's not that you just believe in yourself, but you also went a step ahead and you did the work. And that, that applies to right now in this pandemic, that our kids also need to step it up a little bit and keep pushing, and adapt, like you say.
that's
So
right.
And tell us about your road now to the Olympics, because this is it's a huge. You're the first medalist on the panel here with Mr. Nacho's classes in school, so kids will be really happy to hear how you reach and where
yes,
in Greece it's a special place. So yeah.
Olympic silver medalist, take it away.
So, for quite a few years, I guess since 96, 97, I've been going out to the Olympic Training Center and training with the best coaches available, and the best athletes in the country. And so I moved out to the Olympic Training Center in 2004, just so I could spend my waking hours there, and focused, and being around people that are doing the same thing that I'm doing, that are training like I'm training, that are going through the same stuff that I'm going through. It really helps when you're faced with a challenge ahead, to have people around that can help support, and just be there and go through it with their teammates, go through it with you. And so it's a certain power and a focus that helps. And so I moved out to the Olympic Training Center, and really had an amazing year. I won all the tournaments in America, and I think we traveled a few times that year, and competed overseas some places. But if you can imagine living in a place where it's almost militant. You wake up in the morning, you do the same things every day. You wake up, you get your breakfast, you go to practice, you get your rest, go to practice again, you get some food, you get some lunch. It becomes a routine, and and you're just living the life, and you're making all the right decisions, and you're just you know doing what you're supposed to be doing, that at that level. um, you stay focused and stay on track, and read books and watch TV shows. Um, but yeah, since then, in in 2004, when I had a chance to compete there, it was pretty amazing, because my first two matches
This is in Athens, Greece, where the
at
first modern Olympic Games, just for the students to know, in Athens. Yes.
Athens, Greece. That's right.
Yeah.
My
Stephen,
yes.
sorry to interrupt. My name is Mr. Pan. I'm one of the Burton PE teachers. Reese, I want to ask you a question. Recently, the PE department's been talking about goal setting. You know, how to plan for a goal, how to long-term, short-term goals. So I'm wondering, what's your process of setting your own goals in your matches, in your personal life? Can you, briefly talk about and share your experience with goal setting?
Yes. I mean, I guess it's important to have realistic goals. I think that's important because we want to at least set ourselves up for opportunity to learn something and to grow from it. So, as far as goal setting, um, you know, for me, for wrestling, there's always that end of the year tournament. To have that goal, and what you're gonna do to get to that point. Um, if you're gonna make a list, for me, wrestling, it was all right. I got to get to the certain weight. I gotta eat this food. I gotta train this much. I have to lift the weights this much. And as we break it down like that, then it helps our goal become a little clearer. And obviously, um, to get to that goal, we have to test ourselves. We have to get to a point where we believe that we're ready, and whatever field you're in, or the goal that you're trying to set, it's important to find those tests and those moments that'll help you grow and get better and learn something. Um, and so that's what I'm saying. I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Olympics in Athens. What was that?
Oh yeah, so in the Olympics, obviously was uh, one of the most exciting experiences of my career. I remember the Olympic Village. When we got to the Olympic Village, um, that was the most amazing sight. There was two huge cafeterias of any kind of food that you wanted from around the world. It was like at a mall where you go to the food court and there's foods from all different parts of the world. It was pretty cool. Um, and I mean, I remember going out and seeing all the athletes. So what happened in our Olympic experience as wrestlers that year, we trained off of site, meaning we didn't train at the Olympic Village where every other country did. We were off site somewhere a few miles away from the Olympic Village, and we would train there on the daily. So about 4 days, um, actually, it was probably like 3 days before we competed. We went to the Olympic Village, and at this point, when we get to the Olympic Village, wrestling is one of the last sports to compete. So they have all the sports in the Olympics, and then they have wrestling. Wrestling's like the last sport to go. And so when we get there, all the other sports are done, and they're partying it up and just having a great time and just loud at night partying and hanging out and just having a great time. And we're sitting there like, all right, we got to compete tomorrow. It's getting ready to focus. And it was just real cool to be a part of that and see all the people and the flags hanging out of the windows. And they had these little Coke machines, and they gave us these little rubber Coke keychains that we would put in the machine, and they would just you would push a button and they'd give us a free Coke or a Gatorade or a Powerade or whatever the Coke brand is. And it was pretty cool. And So competing wise, my first 2 matches, I have to wrestle guys that have beaten me. My first match, I have to wrestle a guy from, I can't think of the country. He had beaten me the year before. In 2003, he beat me in the World Championships, and I have to wrestle him first round of the Olympics, first round. And I beat him. I think I beat him 6-1. And then my second match, I had to wrestle a guy from Cuba. And in 2002, he was the world champion in 2002 from Cuba. And I had to wrestle him, and I had beaten him, and he had beaten me. So we were like 1-1 or something like that. And we ended up having a real close match, and I had to beat him. And I had to do some real funky things to beat him. And so,
That's great.
Stephen, can I ask
Sorry.
you a question? It's kind of like a two-parter.
Sorry, we got like 10 minutes, so we
Right.
we will ask questions also for the students as well.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sure.
Two-parter. I know now with the pandemic, what would you say to the kids that may possibly not get to do sports this year? And then I know one of my athletes is here, and he knows, I guess, a little-
Wrestler.
Yeah, he's a wrestler. He knows your background. I think he knows one of your nephews wrestles for Stanford. Is he gonna
Jaden.
leave Stanford because of the pandemic? So those are the two-part questions. So I just want to throw those out to you.
Yeah, this whole pandemic thing is just crazy, and it's just something that we've never experienced before. So it's hard to really compare it to anything. Just coming from my personal mentality, what I would do in a situation if I was in high school. And now I'm 42 years old with the experience, life behind me, to have this experience and knowledge. But if I was serious about the sport, guys that are trying to stay in shape and stay ready, I mean, you got to stay physically fit. You gotta be physically and mentally ready. You gotta really challenge yourself and do things outside the box. I mean, for me, I also did something called capoeira, which was just a physical thing that I could do and feel good about. And I think that's important for any kid or athlete that's trying to stay in shape, to just try to stay active, stay physical, do things. I don't know, run, have fun with it. The capoeira that I did was fun for me, and it was really got my heart rate up. And so my nephew Jaden, off the record, I don't know. I can't really say for sure, but it's a big deal. I mean, as soon as Stanford decided they're going to drop their program, I got a call from like 3 different colleges, me, and I'm his uncle. And they're like, oh, I can't call his dad. I'm going to call you and you talk to him. You tell him that we're interested. And I had like 3 colleges call me about him. And so, he's really talented, and he's got a bright future ahead of him. I know last I heard, they're really adamant about going to the Ivy League. He was going to Stanford for a reason, and that was for the schooling. And so I know he wanted to go to some kind of Ivy League. I know Princeton was looking at him, so he might go to Princeton. But I know Arizona State is looking at him. I got a call from Zeke Jones, and it sounded legit. So I don't know. He might be a Sun Devil.
Thanks for answering the questions.
Any other students that have a question, please type it on the chat so we can answer your questions. We have about 6 minutes. And so decision making is so important. That's what you were talking about, decision making to train to get there, and then decision making in the Olympics, not to go party when you got to focus. So it's so important. You want to talk about a little bit more decision making or any along those lines? Unless any kid, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or any of the teachers, any of the adults.
Yeah, well, we're always faced with choices in life, and we want to try to take that right path. And sometimes we can fall off the path, but try to get back on the path, and we're always faced with challenges. I think things will always get better. We can always learn from our mishaps. We can always grow and pass on our knowledge to the future.
Just to add also that Stephen is a member. 2 years ago, he was inducted, where they induct the best athletes, deserved, distinguished members of the USA Hall of Fame. This was 2 years ago. We were witnessing, we were part of that crowd there to witness Stephen Abbas' induction in the Hall of Fame. And also Stephen was a MMA fighter for a little bit. You want to add that because this is another challenge you took upon you, and it's another transition from wrestling, just maybe to touch up.
Fighting in general for the longest time has been something that usually goes to the ground. So the wrestlers have an immediate advantage because we're comfortable there. I guess anywhere you're comfortable, you have an advantage. And I think that's how a lot of the jiu-jitsu guys got a lot of success as well, because they're comfortable there. They're comfortable on their back. And I think anytime when you have so many years of experience, I mean, wrestling mentality teaches you never to quit. And so if you take that through life, you're going to be successful. You're going to drive and strive for what you want. And I think, I think that's one of the biggest things that are advantages to fighting. I was 3-0, but I didn't really stick with it because getting punched in the head is not fun. It's not fun at all.
Yeah, Stephen, tell us about your education. What is your major? It's important and what is that picture on the back of your wall?
Oh, this is a wrestling picture I got from Brazil. I was in Rio, and I went to like one of the markets, and they had the Amazon wrestlers, and I was like, I need to take that.
And it's a headlock, is it?
Yeah, front headlock. Yeah, you see that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But what was your first part of your question?
Your education, what did you, because sometimes students asking, what your interests, what your hobbies, what on a side you like to do, your education.